Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Hey guys, we're your hosts, M and J, and today we're talking about episode 11 of season 5 of Netflix's She-Ra, the last episode before the two-part series finale, so most of it is set up for that. Unfortunately, the characters continue to make strange decisions, which is frustrating, especially being so close to the finale. For example, they have another opportunity to rescue some of their captive friends, but for some reason they leave them behind, and it feels more like it's just because the plot demands it, rather than that being the logical choice. They also try to set things up, but it doesn't work because it's too late into the game, so things end up getting a little confusing and muddled. But I also feel like even though we're so close to the finale, there hasn't been enough progression when it comes to character development. Adora's still having crippling self-doubt to the point where it's affecting her ability to fight. Catra's still bitter and vindictive despite her supposedly turning over a new leaf, and Shadow Weaver's still manipulative and condescending, and going off her own biases instead of just the fact of the matter. These are major character arcs that just weren't completed, which is unfortunate, but let's just get into the episode. This episode begins where the last one left off. Shadow Weaver and Castaspella tell everyone they believe the Failsafe is under Mystacor. Apparently, Mystacor was built on the ruins of a First One citadel. They say there are tunnels underneath Mystacor that they believe will lead them to the Failsafe, and when they have it, they can use it to release the magic and restore it back to the planet. Everyone is suspicious of Shadow Weaver because they're worried she'll try to take the magic for herself, which is completely understandable, but Shadow Weaver says they need to work together because Micah is controlling Mystacor, and Micah is being controlled by Horde Prime. And she says they don't have time to argue because Horde Prime has already gotten too much ground, so they need to act now. Adora does agree that this is their only lead, so she decides this needs to be a stealth mission, and turns to ask Catra if Milog can get them in. But Catra and Milog have walked away. Shadow Weaver is very dismissive of Catra, because what else is new, and tells Adora to leave her to sulk. But Adora tells the others to get ready and goes to look for them. There's only 3 episodes left of this series, and there are so many things that just haven't been addressed. There's been a lot of tension between Catra and Shadow Weaver since the beginning, and it's only getting addressed now. Shadow Weaver used Catra to escape the Horde, so that's awkward to say the least. Plus, Shadow Weaver hasn't really gone through any character development this whole time, but she's just here and no one even knows if she's their prisoner or not. This whole thing was really awkwardly handled. Adora finds them and asks if she's going to help them in Mystacor, but Catra asks why she should bother since Adora seems to have it handled with Shadow Weaver, and then questions how she can follow her after everything she's done to them. And I understand where she's coming from, but at the same time they just don't have any other options right now. There's only 3 episodes left. Adora says as much, and also says that she hasn't forgotten all the terrible things that Shadow Weaver did to them, but Prime is the greater of 2 evils right now. Catra puts her hand on the back of her neck, begrudgingly admitting that she has a point, especially considering the fate of the world is at stake, but she says she's only going to keep Shadow Weaver in check, and then pulls the tsundere "it's not like I like you" or anything. That trope just annoys me. At least she's finally stepping up. It would be nice if they could find a better option than follow Shadow Weaver around though. Meanwhile, Natasha and Spinnerella have been demoted to background characters again. We only see them for a second when they wave to Bo, while he's fiddling with his arrows. We don't even get to hear Spinnerella's thoughts on the whole thing. How has this affected her? How has this affected her and Natasha's relationship? Does she remember anything from when she was connected to the hive mind? Maybe something useful? But the show decided they don't need them as main characters anymore, so all they get is a cameo now. All that potential down the drain. Entrapta pulls Bo aside and tells him that removing Spinnerella's chip was a lot harder than Catra's. It had almost fused entirely with her spine, which means the longer the chips are on people's necks, the harder it is to remove them, and it might get to a point where they can't be removed at all. Well, isn't that just great? They had the chance to get 3 princesses last episode and they left 2 of them behind, and it wasn't because they were forced to. Catra had a clear shot of Mermista's chip, but she hesitated, and then Perfuma was convinced she could just talk Scorpia out of the mind control. But it wasn't like there was some conditioning she had to break. She was being controlled by a piece of technology. All Perfuma had to do was smack that chip on the back of Scorpia's neck, and they could just get her back to Entrapta. But she wasted all of her chances, and in the end Scorpia was left behind, which is really not fair to her. This was not the time for the power of friendship. This was the time to destroy some tech in the name of friendship. Entrapta hopes that she can crack Horde Prime's system and shut it all down, which would free everyone at once, which makes the most sense. At least someone's trying to save everyone. Bo tells her to keep working on it while they go on their mission. The group arrives in Mystacor and find the entire kingdom is under the Horde's control, but Milog's magic allows them to travel undetected. They enter the castle only to find that Micah is there, so it's a tense moment, especially for for Castaspella and Glimmer. I actually like this scene. Casta putting a reassuring hand on Glimmer's shoulder, finally seeing a loved one who they thought was dead all these years, except he's under mind control and will definitely kill them if he finds them. So there's a lot of tension and drama. I just wish the episode had delivered on it. Luckily, he can't see through Milog's magic, so he walks off, and they're able to continue. Although I'm kind of surprised Micah can't detect their magic, since he's such a high-level sorcerer, or the other people of Mystacor for that matter. They get to the main hall, and Catra thinks the coast is clear, so she tries to go in, but it turns out they aren't alone. So Shadow Weaver tries to cover Catra's mouth, since she was worried that she'd be heard. But then Catra panics, and it ends up breaking Milog's invisibility spell, so now the hive mind knows that they're there, and the sorcerer starts attacking. Well, that could have gone better. I don't blame Catra for panicking, considering the fact that it's Shadow Weaver, but she also just ruined this mission. Adora tries to transform, but it doesn't work, so apparently she hasn't gotten her mojo back after last episode. Thanks a lot, Perfuma. So they have to fight their way through. Castaspella looks guilty after taking out the sorceress, probably because she knows her personally. At least I'm assuming as much. We don't really know much about Castaspella or Mystacor, and spending a little time to establish that would have really helped the tension in this scene, but Shadow Weaver just rushes her along, since she couldn't care less about any of these people. The last time she was in this room, she killed a man, so here we are. Back at the base, Swiftwind is on lookout duty. When he notices Entrapta walking around with some tech, he asks what she's doing and she explains she's trying to hack into Horde Prime's signal, but she needs to get a better picture of the system, so she wants to find a bunch of Horde clones and analyze their connection to it. Swiftwind says that's really dangerous, but he also knows he can't stop her, so he decides to go with her so she can have backup. Also, she's apparently been calling him Bird Horse off screen, and he gets offended by it, but apparently he's given up at this point, and just goes with it. This is the first time we're hearing about this though. Back in Mystacor, Shadow Weaver leads the group to the secret tunnel. She and Castaspella unlock it with magic. Catra's looking kind of freaked out, so Adora tries to console her, saying everything's gonna be okay. But Shadow Weaver tells them to get moving because Mystacor probably knows they're here, because of Catra's outburst, so they end up glaring at each other. All this tension is putting the mission in jeopardy. There's a lot of images on the walls of people trying to get the magic for themselves, including the spell of obtainment, which Castaspella brings up against Shadow Weaver. Shadow Weaver says the spell was a mistake, but that she's paid the price for it, so she doesn't see a reason to bring it up. Okay, but there's still all the people who were hurt because of it. She hasn't even apologized, let alone faced trial. She killed a man, among other crimes. Castaspella brings up that she used Micah when he was just a child, and Shadow Weaver responds by saying that the spell would have worked if Micah hadn't bailed. So she doesn't actually think the spell was a mistake. She's still mad about it, but no one calls her out on that. Shadow Weaver just says that Micah is an exceptional sorcerer, even as a child, and then laments that it doesn't run in the family. So Castaspella gets offended and everyone walks away. Well, last season she said that Glimmer would be more powerful than both of her parents, but I really don't like how they treated Castaspella in this series. Entrapta and Swiftwind arrive at the Horde Spire, but Entrapta wants to get closer, despite Swiftwind's protests. He argues that no tech is worth her getting captured, but she says it's not about the tech, it's about saving their friends. So Swiftwind relents. Too bad the others couldn't have just done their job and get Mermista and Scorpia back, but now Entrapta has to risk her life. Maybe having more chips to study would have helped. So Entrapta gets closer and actually does get the information she needs. Unfortunately, a Horde clone is right on top of her. It then cuts back to the group in Mystacor to build tension. As they're walking, Shadow Weaver notices a spell on the floor and tries to stop Adora from walking into it, but it's too late. Although that trap was pretty obvious. It's a glowing glyph on the floor. It's not like it's a trap door or a button concealed in the floor tiles, yet no one else seems to notice. So fire shoots up from the floor, and Adora is seemingly engulfed in it, so Catra rushes in and pulls her out. But neither of them are hurt at all, except Catra's pride when Adora teases her about it, triggering another tsundere moment. But it turns out the fire was just an illusion, or at least most of it is, since Shadow Weaver says that some of it is real, but we don't see any of that. I wonder why they didn't just make it all fire, cause an illusion is a pretty bad booby trap, especially one that's supposed to conceal an ancient powerful artifact. Maybe the illusion is supposed to lure people into a false sense of security? Still seems like a really poor security measure though. At least Adora and Catra are alright, so they all continue on, but Adora is still unsure of herself, even though it's season 5. Seriously, the finale is right around the corner and we've been through this already. As they walk, Shadow Weaver comments to Adora that she and Catra are close again. I know, right? But also you're here too, which is also unbelievable. But here we are. Shadow Weaver doesn't think that's wise because she believes that Catra is the reason Adora can't transform into to She-Ra, which makes no sense, and there's no reason to bring Catra up at all. She lost She-Ra in the last episode when she was under pressure fighting Scorpia and Perfuma refused to let her fight back. It kind of seemed like she got too overwhelmed. Catra was nowhere around because Scorpia blasted her through the Fright Zone, and they didn't reunite until way after she lost She-Ra, so Catra doesn't have anything to do with this. But I guess Shadow Weaver still hates Catra, so she's gonna blame her for everything even when she doesn't know what she's talking about. She tells Adora that if she cares about Catra, then she has to understand she needs to transform into She-Ra. It's the only way to stop Horde Prime, and if she can't, they're all doomed. So Adora says she will stop Horde Prime, no matter what. But Catra's listening in, and she's obviously not happy about it. Meanwhile, the clone confronts Entrapta, but the clone just so happens to be Hordak, which is extremely convenient, but I guess we only have 3 episodes left. Entrapta calls him by his name, but Hordak dismisses it. Apparently the conditioning has taken a toll on him, so he's rejecting the notion of having a name or an identity of his own. Despite that, he's still carrying around that crystal that she gave him, and even goes as far as to ask her what she's done to him. Somehow it's not surprising that the little screen time he has is going to be used for shipping, even though there's a lot they really need to address with this character. But Entrapta's delighted to know that he recognizes her, and that they finally found each other, only for Swiftwind to jump in and demand he get away from her. Then he drags Entrapta away with his teeth, since they have what they came for, although they should probably take Hordak with them. There's so much left to do with this character. He technically hasn't started his redemption arc, even though he does get redeemed by the end of the finale, but instead of it being earned, it's just shoehorned in for the sake of shipping, and I think the story really suffers for it. If they took him with them now, even though it's so late into the game, it still would have helped. They could have used a subplot in the finale to flesh out Hordak's character, and Entrapta could work on deprogramming him, and along the way, he'll understand what he did to Etheria was wrong, but instead they just leave him there for his inevitable heel-face turn in the 11th hour. But I'm surprised Entrapta didn't insist on him coming with them, considering the fact that she spent the season looking for him. Instead, she calls out to him, saying that his imperfections are beautiful. Can't say I agree though, considering the fact that this is a guy who enslaved most of the population, and I wouldn't be surprised if Scorpia was the last of her kind, just saying. Back in Mystacor, the group makes it to the Failsafe. It turns out it's stored inside a giant crystal. Apparently it needs to be bonded to a person and then carried to the heart of Etheria, and Shadow Weaver wants Adora to do it, because it can't just be an off switch. It's the series finale, it has to be more dramatic than that. No one's sure that's safe, but Shadow Weaver keeps insisting that Adora move forward. But before she can step inside, Catra stops her. Shadow Weaver gets angry and tells her now's not the time, and someone has to carry the failsafe, so Catra tells Shadow Weaver to do it. It is kind of the least she could do after everything. Catra calls her out and says that she's been watching her the whole time, and that she knows she's been down here before, and there must be a reason she didn't just do it herself. So she demands that Shadow Weaver tell them everything she knows. I'm glad someone's calling her out, not surprising that it's Catra. So she explains that whoever uses the failsafe is going to have to absorb all the magic that's released from the heart, and that something like that would kill a normal person, but She-Ra should be able to handle it. Adora asks what'll happen if she doesn't survive. Well, She-Ra's supposed to be the most powerful woman in the universe. She should be able to handle it. But Shadow Weaver says the magic will be restored through her sacrifice, and Prime will be defeated. Everyone starts yelling at Shadow Weaver for lots of reasons, but Adora tells everyone to stop it. She announces that she's decided to take the failsafe. Catra tells her that Shadow Weaver's just sacrificing her, but Adora argues that that would still be better than Horde Prime getting the heart, and they're out of options. But Micah shows up before anyone can say anything else. A fight ensues, and Glimmer calls out to her father, and the two are able to speak to each other for the first time. Unfortunately, Micah's under mind control. He says he's pleased to see her and his sister, but then quips that he's not happy about seeing Shadow Weaver again. So it's nice to know that he still has some semblance of himself while he's being mind controlled. Glimmer tries attacking, but she's no match for him. And on top of that, Adora still can't transform, so they quickly become overwhelmed. Bo calls everyone to retreat, but Shadow Weaver doesn't want to leave the failsafe behind, so Adora starts to enter the chamber, but Catra begs her to stop, saying that it doesn't have to always be her, but it does in this case. Again, the world is at stake, and she's the only one who can use the failsafe without dying. Would she really rather sacrifice someone else knowing that they would die? Seems pretty selfish to me, but Adora goes in anyway, and begins to receive the failsafe. Micah sees this, so he floods the chamber with dark magic, and they're all basically left at his mercy. Seeing this, Adora is finally able to transform, and She-Ra's able to wipe the floor with them pretty easily. Now that She-Ra has the failsafe, she wants to retreat, and offers her hand to Catra, but she dismisses it and walks off. She's carrying it within her body, and it takes the form of a a heart-shaped glyph on her chest, which I'm sure means something in the first one's language, but it's still a little cheesy. And then they all just leave. She-Ra even collapses the entryway behind them for good measure. But why would they do that? Why would they just leave them behind? At least take Micah with them. They can just hit the chips on the back of their necks, which will incapacitate them. And they would be able to rescue more people, including Micah, who is basically Horde Prime's biggest trump card. Not to mention that would be a huge boost to morale. But they leave them behind to fight another day. It's a good thing Entrapta has a plan to take out the entire grid at once. They don't even know she's doing that. They're just making things unnecessarily harder for themselves. I guess they've learned nothing from the last episode. Everyone's back at base. Entrapta's looking at the data she collected with a small smile, so she looks hopeful. Bo and Glimmer are sleeping, but then he reaches out to her, so that's another ship setting sail. The Failsafe is constantly glowing on Adora's chest. I'm surprised she's able to sleep with that. It seems like it would just shine in her eyes. At least cover it with a blanket. Catra's watching Adora sleep, or the Failsafe, or both. She's really upset about Adora taking the Failsafe, but I don't know what she was supposed to do in that situation. Micah captured everyone, and they were probably gonna get chipped, or be killed, whichever happened to come first. Not to mention it looked like he was gonna destroy the Failsafe. They were all doomed, and she's mad about her saving their lives. Catra picks up her things and starts to leave, because if she can't have things her way, why bother sticking around? Adora wakes up and sees that Catra's gone, so she gets up to look for her. She spots her and Milog leaving, and calls out to her, but Catra starts running. They end up fighting, with Catra trying to get away from Adora and Adora pulling her back. Adora's upset that Catra was just gonna leave, but Catra says she's doing her a favor because if she leaves, there'll be nothing to distract her, just like Shadow Weaver said. Adora tells her not to worry about Shadow Weaver, and that this isn't about her, so Catra pushes her to the ground. Catra goes off about how Adora is always sacrificing herself for others, and asks her when she gets to choose what she wants. But doesn't she want to stop the Horde and save the world? So Adora says that she has to do this because she's literally the only one who can. But then Catra guilts her, saying that if that's her choice, she doesn't have to stick around to see it happen. She turns her back on Adora, who begs her to stay because she needs her. So Catra leaves, saying that she doesn't need her and she never has. There's a lot to unpack here. Catra has a lot of nerve. A big reason why it always has to be Adora is because Catra kept dragging her into stuff. She even destroyed the world when Adora begged her not to, and she didn't even regret it when she was being pulled into the void. As a side note, it doesn't always have to be Adora. That one time it was Queen Angela, and she's still trapped between dimensions, by the way. Also, Catra is one of the reasons that Horde Prime is here. Glimmer's another big part, but at least she had some self-awareness, and isn't blaming Adora for trying to fix her mess. Not to mention trying to save everyone's lives, including Catra's, but Catra's still making her feel bad and making her cry. After everything. I guess it's not surprising when she's clearly still mad about Adora leaving the Fright Zone in the first place. The least Catra could do would be to give her some moral support in this really scary mission she has. But no, she's gonna turn her back on her. What else is new? Shadow Weaver shows up telling Adora that she did the right thing, but Adora snaps at her, saying that she ruins people and she ruins any chance that they have to be happy, which is true, but Catra also had multiple opportunities to better her life and she chose not to take any of them. She actually chose to make things a lot worse. Shadow Weaver says she did what she had to do. Shadow Weaver, you didn't have to do any of that stuff. But Adora just tells her to keep telling herself that. Adora says she is going to take the Failsafe to the heart, but she's going to do everything in her power to make sure Shadow Weaver doesn't get any of that magic for herself. And that's where the episode ends. I think this episode could have gone better. At least Entrapta has a plan, but there was no reason for them to leave Micah behind, or the other sorcerers for that matter. Plus they haven't learned that all they have to do is smack them on the back of the neck, and then just drag them away. It's not that hard. It's frustrating that they know the technology's weakness, but they don't bother to exploit it. Maybe if they gave us a reason not to, like maybe if the chip gets damaged it could hurt their nervous system or something like that. But that's not the case, so that could have been handled better. Micah doesn't deserve this. He's been through so much. And then there's Hordak. They aren't bothering to flesh out his character or give him a proper redemption arc. Sure, it's nice that Entrapta was finally able to make a deep connection with somebody, especially since that's something she struggled with for her whole life. But he was also a genocidal maniac who did a lot of harm to Etheria and its people. That's not something that can just be glossed over. And then there's Catra, who it seems like they expect us to believe that she's come so far, but that's just not what we're seeing. She knows that their backs are against a wall, and what's at stake if they fail. I can understand being resentful about working with Shadow Weaver, but she could at least try to find a different option instead of just demanding that Adora not go through with it. If she doesn't use the failsafe and keeps keeps trying to fight Horde Prime the way they are, then they're probably going to lose all of their allies that have been chipped, and Horde Prime would probably end up getting the heart of Etheria. So it would be really helpful if Catra would just cooperate, instead of making things harder for Adora. If she really cared about her, she would respect her decisions and be there for her when she needs it. And if she thinks this is the wrong course of action, then she should try to find a better way, instead of running off and abandoning Adora again when she needs her. But that's our opinion. What do you guys think? Only 2 more episodes to go before the series is over. Thanks for watching, everyone. But before we go, we want to give a shout out to our members: Caleb Nelson, Stutania, Tyrant Carnivore, Adam K, Shiny Orc Boy, Taylor Ramirez, The Rabbit Mancer, Dash Hound, Haley Kosheva, Ray Thulu, Hunter Rose, and Miranda Sinistra. Thanks for your support. You can become a member by hitting the join button next to the subscribe button, or you can buy us a coffee if you'd like to support us that way. But thanks again for watching, we really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, you can leave a like, and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. And we'll see you all in the next video. Bye everyone. Bye guys.